I practically grew up in the arcades, and when that arcade experience finally hit my home console of choice, well, I just knew I had to have it. I am the Game Collector, and this is Second Opinion Games, and today I do the review of Virtual On Cyber Troopers for the Sega Saturn.
Second Opinion Games.
So what I have here is a super big box for Virtual On, the Cyber Troopers for the Sega Saturn. Now you could play the whole game using this pretty cool Sega Saturn controller, and it uses up almost every single button on here, and it makes the game super complicated. But I don't want to use that. And I have the Japanese version of the game. Luckily, it's pretty much all in English, so it's good. Why do I have the Japanese version? Because it came with this. And because you have the Japanese version, you're going to need to use the action replay to play it on your Sega Saturn. Also, shabam! This is what you really want. Now, this is a whole lot of fake buttons right here. The only thing you really have is 2 sticks, and 2 buttons on each, and a start button. Also pay notice to the backside. Someone glued this to a table because it slips around like crazy, so put down a nice non-stick mat when you're going to play it, and you will have an awesome time. Make sure you have this. It's not necessary to play the game, but it does make everything a lot more fun. Thanks, bye. It's a good thing we have that Sega Saturn Twin Stick because we're going to make good use of it. If you're playing on the Saturn control pad, well, there's plenty of different options that you could set up pretty much any way you want in order to play the game. But on the Twin Stick, everything is set up for you. The boost buttons are on top, the right stick fires your weapon to your right, the left stick fires the weapon to your left, and pressing them at the exact same time fires them together, or the middle one. And depending on which of the 8 or so robots you pick, depends on what weapons you use. And there are 3 major classes of robots here. Of course, there are the medium ones that are pretty much well-balanced and good all-around fighters. Then there are the female-ish ones, which probably has some type of boob cannons because Japan's really classy, and they're generally quicker, but do almost no damage whatsoever. And then, of course, you have the heavies, the big, slow tanks that do massive amounts of damage. This is really the category I prefer to play with because I just like destroying my opponent. And as we'll see later in the game, at least one of these heavies come very much in handy. Couple of quick other control hints. If you take both control sticks and push them away from each other, you do a jump. If you're jumping in air and you push them both together, it does a jump cancel, which forces you to the ground. This comes in handy because when you jump, you automatically target on your enemy. So if you happen to lose your person you're fighting against, jumping is the quickest way to find them and to lock back on. Also, if you're up close and you push both controllers in, well then you could actually block some melee attacks. Oh yeah, there are also melee attacks in this game. However, most of the time you just want to make sure you're the first to land the melee attack because they do a tremendous amount of damage, especially if you're the heavy versus one of the lighter characters. You're going to destroy them very quickly and move through the game quick, which this is an arcade game. It's designed to be plowed through in a single sitting and relatively fast. If you manage to beat the first 5 or 6 enemies really quickly, you will get a rank, whether it be A or C or B or whatever it is. Probably even the S rank in there, but the fastest I can do it is an A rank. Good enough for me anyway. This game feels just like the arcade, down to the music, and the graphics actually translate pretty well. I love the 32-bit polygon style. I know many of you might not think this looks like much of anything, but to me, this is gorgeous and this is freaking art. So the controls pretty much spot on with the arcade, the graphics are great, and the music just gets you freaking amped. I just love the explosion sounds and pretty much everything with the style of this game. It feels great, and the fact that I'm playing on a home arcade stick really, gives me the arcade feel. Make sure you sit down in front of a big screen TV to play it, to really bring it home, and this is an epic experience. When you start smashing through these robots, you are going to have a great time. This is simply a must-have. And when you start plowing through the robots as you do, eventually you will start dying and dying again. And this gives you an opportunity to try out different robots. How many times do you play a fighting game and just to be locked into a single character? Gosh, that really ticks me off. So I'm happy that you could switch back and forth on the fly as needed. The levels here also look really, really good. Most of them are somewhat flat, with occasional hills or buildings to hide behind, which also goes to the strategy of this game, because certain enemies you want to keep a distance from, and generally hiding behind buildings, poking your head out, firing a couple shots, jumping behind a building is a pretty decent strategy. And at least one of the maps pays tribute to Sonic the Hedgehog. The green one is literally called the Green Hill Zone, which is freaking mind-blowingly awesome. I absolutely love that. The attention to detail in these levels is really unbelievable, even if they are very small and you're locked into that. There's no ring outs or anything. You just are in a small arena, one-on-one. So it's basically a fighting game and a mech game rolled together. And you know what? It plays great. So if you want to get some practice in, well then, check out the Versus mode. It's split screen action at its finest. You'll be surprised how competitive these matches are. Sometimes you'll be crushing your friend, or another time you'll be getting crushed yourself. The matches will go back and forth, sometimes coming down to the very wire. And you have some options here. You could set a time limit, but I recommend just turning that off and just go straight on deathmatch. In my opinion, this is the best way of playing this game. Otherwise, you'll just be playing hide and seek forever, and the matches will be super annoying. So, go for the kill in deathmatch. Now let's get back to the main game. Maybe we could even see the end boss. After you pass about 3/4 into the game, you end up on the moon, where things go a little dark, but that's expected. We are on the moon after all. But if you have the right character, you'll have no trouble crushing your way through it, at least until you come to the end boss of this game. The freaking Juggernaut here. This thing is awful to fight against. It transforms and has this massive laser beam that it's pretty much a one-hit kill. On top of it, your weapons do practically nothing to it the majority of the time. Your best chance is to avoid everything on the screen, trying to dodge back and forth, avoiding all the laser fire. Because if it touches you, you're probably dead. If you're playing as the weaker class characters, well, you're going to get hit and die very, very fast. Also, don't get in too close on this thing because your melee attacks, they just don't work against it. So keep your distance. Stay away from it at all costs. But it's still going to crush you time and time again. Now, I spent almost a half hour on this end boss, and I could not figure out a winning strategy for the life of me. And then, when I finally did get a winning strategy, I still found myself dying again and again. My favorite character is Raiden. It has a very devastating beam laser, which crushes your normal opponents. However, against this end boss, it does only a little bit of damage. But you know what? That's more damage than anything else. Wait for it to change color, and if you time it right, you could get 2 full laser beam blasts on it, just decimating it. But you know what? As its energy goes down, it also gets more aggressive and more difficult. Eventually, though, you will win and crush it because there's infinite continues, thank God, but also because your skills will improve dramatically as time goes on. So keep at it, and you beat this beautiful arcade experience. Now, the first time you play through this whole game, it may take you an hour or two at the very most, depending on your skill level. But you know what? You're going to keep coming back to it again and again. And it's really because of that 90s arcade feel that Sega seemed to have mastered for their home system. Now, I wish more people would have discovered the joy of playing with the Sega Saturn. Most people just picked up the PlayStation, and they really didn't have anything quite like the feel of this game on it, and that's pretty sad. They did have some type of virtual style games, but nothing really this good, and nothing that really made you feel like you were shoving quarters directly in your console, like Virtual On for the Sega Saturn. It is a simple must-have for anyone who loves a great arcade experience. But that's just my opinion. Thanks for watching. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this review. I had a blast making it. And hopefully you also decide to pick up the Sega Saturn Twin Stick, because there is something called the Total Control 3 that lets you use Sega Saturn controllers on your Sega Dreamcast, which is great for fighting games. Or if you have the Sega Saturn Twin Stick, well then you can play Virtual On the Dreamcast without having to buy that super expensive controller too. So you know what? You could use it for 2 games. Or maybe you could use it for more. I'm going to test this thing out on some other Dreamcast games, and I'll get back to you later on that one. So, if you guys have any other tips or tricks for me, let me know. If you have any other Sega Saturn games you want me to cover, let me know that too, because you know what? I have a ton of them to cover yet. So until later, I'll see you again, guys.